So it hasn't been the greatest start to the season for Liverpool, has it? And unsurprisingly, that's led to talk about how they might be able to fix the issues that they're seeing so far this season in the transfer market. And I have to say, I'm not always a fan of that kind of talk popping up straight away whenever there are problems. I always think that coaches should be asked to solve these issues on the training ground. And in fairness to Arne Slot, we have seen him trying to do that. I mean, I'm thinking about the 4-4-2 away to Eintracht Frankfurt, the low block against Real Madrid, some of the drop in midfielders deep in build-up that we've seen in recent weeks. You can't accuse him of not trying to solve it on the training ground. I'd also say as well that there's clearly improvement to come from Liverpool as the signings settle in, because at the end of the day, look, if this is going to be the peak level of performance from Milos Kerkez, Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak, then they are going to go down as absolutely disastrous signings, aren't they? And I don't think they will. I think they've got too much quality, too much pedigree for this to be the peak of the performance. So I do think there's a lot more to come from them. But of course, when you make changes to your squad, and I think this is a really underrated element, everybody sees transfers as solutions and things that are going to pay off, but it's underrated really that when you do make changes to your squad, you add problems to it as well, because there's weaknesses in players that you didn't maybe foresee them bring into the club, things that you maybe have missed in the scouting, areas where they were complemented quite nicely by a teammate at a former club, and yet because they haven't got that support here, you do see that weakness kind of exposed. And of course, your own mix, usually it has, particularly Liverpool last season, a mixture of weaknesses and strengths that really complemented each other and worked, and that's why they were able to absolutely romp to the Premier League title. And as soon as you change that mix, you just end up with a whole host of new problems that you maybe didn't predict. So you can ultimately spend a lot of money and change a lot of things and still come out the other side of that, as Liverpool kind of had, needing to add more to your squad really. And there's a chance that's how Liverpool are kind of thinking about things at the moment, that yes, they did a lot of surgery on the squad, but it's uncovered and created some new problems that they now need to solve in the transfer market. So because it's the international break and just for fun, I wanted to take a look at a couple of areas I think what's needed and who might provide it. Maybe not in the January window, because we never know if Liverpool are going to do business in that, but after that at the very least, because let's be honest, over the next couple of transfer windows, they are going to sign more players. We'd be surprised if they didn't. So I wanted to start with centre-half because, I mean, it's clear, isn't it, that Liverpool are going to need someone in that position. For starters, Ibrahima Konaté's contract situation is still up in the air at the moment. No real guidance on which way that is going to go. But I think even if he stays, I think Liverpool will need one, because you look at Joe Gomez, he is surely going to leave in the next couple of windows. He's very close to doing so in the summer. And also Liverpool, regardless of what was going on with other centre-halves, we know they tried to sign a centre-back in the summer as well. So it's a clear area really where Liverpool will look to strengthen. We've talked about it all season really so far, but goodness me, I haven't really changed my opinion on this, that's for sure. Liverpool are absolutely desperate to add a passer to the back line. They lost Trent Alexander-Arnold, didn't they, over the summer? Milos Kerkez came in and he's not a progressive passer in the Andy Robertson mould. And so what's happening so frequently is teams are just funneling that ball to Ibrahima Konaté. He's getting stuck with it because he's not kind of the most progressive passer that you've ever seen in your life. And Liverpool are getting really trapped down that right-hand side and getting pressed in, and they're turning over the ball. We saw it so much against Manchester City, didn't we? That was a really good example of their issues in terms of that. So they're going to have to look to solutions for that, to me. And is it going to be at full-back? I can't see so, because obviously Conor Bradley's there, Frimpong's there. On your left-hand side, you've just bought Kerkez, who is at the very least your future at left-back. So it's probably going to be the solution to this, is adding a passer at centre-half. And, well, the obvious one that I want to talk about now is, of course, Mark Gay. We know for a fact that Liverpool like him. I mean, they had him in their offices in London, ready to sign, ready to announce, before Crystal Palace pulled the plug. And I think he offered a real reminder of why Liverpool wanted to sign him when he came to Anfield earlier this season in the League Cup. Yes, it was against a weakened Liverpool side, that's absolutely true, but I still thought you saw all the qualities that Mark Gay provides. He provided 18 passes into the final third that evening, which is really, really impressive numbers, but most impressive because that is twice as many as any other player from both the Crystal Palace and the Liverpool sides managed. So that just shows you really how much quality really he has on the ball, and his ability to get it forward and get it into the forwards to your attackers, which is something Liverpool have sorely lacked, I think, at times this season. I mean, you can see he's 81st percentile for progressive passes this season, which is 4.6 per 90 minutes. And that is more impressive because Palace are not a side that dominates possession. So his opportunities to make progressive passes aren't actually that high, and yet he's putting through an incredibly high number. And you think you translate that to Liverpool, and I think those numbers would go even further up. And you can see the qualities that he has in the progressive passing. I'll bring up a graphic for you now. His ability to fire it through the lines is really obvious there, but also he's got that switch of play in his locker, which again, an underrated element that Trent Alexander-Arnold brought to the team, really, wasn't it? That his ability to get the ball from one side to the other, to switch the angle of attack and catch out the opposition's defence and their ability to press you. So you can see that Marc Guéhi has got it in his locker there from that. And of course, there's a bit of a bias to the left-hand side there, but he does play on the left side of a back three, doesn't he? So you are going to kind of see that. But he's definitely very much both-footed. So I would be comfortable seeing him on the right-hand side of a back four, absolutely, because he can pass either way. And you just think if you add him to this Liverpool team that was playing against Manchester City at the weekend, Haaland's job in the press there was to just literally sit on Virgil van Dijk, don't allow the ball to go anywhere near him. Well, imagine you had Marc Guéhi alongside him, his ability to pass the ball through the lines. Well, you're kind of caught in two stools then, aren't you? You can't just shut down Van Dijk because the other guy is pretty handy with the ball at his feet. And so you can see the obvious benefits of having a player like this in the team if Liverpool were to sign him, because that build-up has been a bit of a messy issue for them this season. Now, of course, I've got to mention here, there is a concern, isn't there, over Marc Guéhi's aerial ability. I mean, interestingly, he's winning 66% of his aerial duels in the Premier League this season, which is actually pretty high for him. But of course, it's only been 11 games so far. It's a smallish sample size, and it is worth mentioning, over a 38-game season last season, he only won 54%. He isn't a tall player. He isn't aerially dominant. So I still think that is a bit of a concern for Liverpool, because Konate won 70.9% of his aerial duels and Van Dijk 78.7%. And you think that comparison there, they are streets ahead of him in terms of winning that. And we've shown in other videos that I've done so far this season, Liverpool are facing more long balls than any other side in the Premier League at the moment. So if you're looking at a signing to make in January, if you're looking at a signing for the summer, is it going to be Marc Guéhi, or do Liverpool's recruitment staff have to start thinking, well, we need someone who's progressive, but we need someone who's also very, very good in the air? And in terms of suggestions for that, it's interesting that another name has been linked at centre-half recently, and that is Borussia Dortmund defender Nico Schlotterbeck. So I'm going to have a little look at him as well. Now, again, you look at his aerial duels for this season, and he's at 60%, so it's actually lower than what Marc Guéhi is this season. But as I say, it's a smallish sample size, and you go back to him last season and he was, over the whole Bundesliga season, he was winning them at 65%, so a good 10-11% higher than Guéhi's aerial success. And I'd also mention that he's 6'3", so that should help him aerially. And I did watch him very recently, actually, in a game against Northern Ireland, playing for Germany. And look, Northern Ireland took a very direct, very British approach, very Premier League kind of approach at the moment to the game. And he seemed to win, I think it was 8 out of 9 aerial duels. He was very, very high for the numbers in terms of aerial duels won. He dealt with that absolutely brilliantly. So you could have faith that he would come to the Premier League and do well in terms of that. So that makes him an attractive prospect. But also, the key thing here is that he's not just a guy who wins his headers, because Konate already is that, but he also is very, very good with the ball at his feet. Now, 7.43 progressive passes per 90 over the last 365 days. That puts him 99th percentile of all centre-backs in Europe's top 5 leagues. So he's one of the best centre-backs out there in terms of his ability to progress the ball. And again, I'll show you a similar graphic here. His progressive passes, typical progressive passes. And you can see here, he goes left, he goes right, really, really varied in his ability to play those passes out from the back. He just, to me, looks like a player who's just really interesting. He's good in the air, really good with the ball at his feet. And you just think, in terms of what Liverpool are looking at, that really does fit the bill, maybe even more than Marc Guéhi, who was so close to signing for the club. But maybe those needs that Liverpool have got have changed. And I just think Schlotterbeck, I don't watch loads of him. I'm not a scout, I always say that. But he's just interesting to me in the numbers, and he has been linked. And of course, he is 18 months out from the end of his contract with Dortmund at the end when it comes to January. I'm pretty sure that Dortmund will want to cash in soon. They won't want to lose him on a free transfer, will they really? So it doesn't look like there's much prospect of signing him up to a new contract. So just an interesting one, I think, to keep an eye on. Maybe for January, maybe for the summer window. But Liverpool have been linked, and to me, he ticks a lot of boxes. You may also, and I've just briefly mentioned him, you may have heard links to Bastoni as well at Inter, but I have to say I'm slightly more sceptical on that. He's a little older than Schlotterbeck. He's played only in Italy for all of his career so far. He's contracted till 2028, so we're talking about big money, and I know the quality is absolutely there. Anybody who watches Serie A regularly raves about him, but just those few extra bits in, kind of extra year in his legs, adapting from Italy to the Premier League, is that even a bigger jump? And the contract situation, so he'd be very, very expensive. He's not one I'm going to do a deep dive into at the moment until something firms up. So I think you can tell there that I think the main needs are build up, an ability to deal with long balls primarily, but probably mostly build up in terms of what Liverpool are doing and what they need to add to the squad. But just the third and final player I want to look at, because he's been mentioned and he doesn't necessarily help him build up, I guess, but he's a very good player, I think, and a player who has been linked a lot, and that is Bournemouth winger Antoine Semenyo. So I want to look at him because I think he would be on Liverpool's radar. He's a 25-year-old thriving in the Premier League, but also because Liverpool are not averse to taking these opportunities when they come to them. Now, there's rumours of a release clause being active in January, and it reminds me so much, really, of the Cody Gakpo signing from PSV Eindhoven. Of course, he came in the middle of a season, didn't he, in the January window. And of course, at the point he signed, he actually wasn't a need at all for this squad. It was they needed new midfielders. They needed to do something at the back as well. And yet they signed a forward who could score goals and play off the left and the middle and wherever you wanted him to. And I thought he had a good finish to that season, but he wasn't a need and he didn't completely change things for Liverpool. Because they still had that huge weakness in midfield. And I guess similarly here, Liverpool have got weaknesses and issues in this squad. You wouldn't say 100% that Semenyo is the one they need to get. But if there's an opportunity there, if that clause is so low that Liverpool think we can't miss this opportunity for a player who's about to reach his peak years, then maybe we could see something in that. And I talk about him coming into his peak, and it's interesting. You look at the last kind of 3 seasons where he's up, or 2 seasons, and the start of this one, and 8 goals in 33 appearances a couple of seasons ago, then 11 goals in 37, and now in this season, he's got 6 goals in 11 appearances in the Premier League. And there is talk of him kind of taking that big leap forward, and you can see why people think that he has done, because he's got all the tools to do that. He's got experience in the Premier League for starters, but he's 2-footed, he's powerful, he's really quick, and yeah, at the moment he is scoring an awful lot of goals. But I do want to sound one kind of small note of caution around Semenyo, and one thing that just makes me a little bit kind of sceptical about it. And I look at this graphic here, which is his shot map from the season so far, and I'm not absolutely blown away by looking at this and thinking, wow, this is 100% sustainable and this guy is going to keep scoring at the rate he has so far this season. I mean, for starters, there's a penalty in there as one of his goals, but you're allowed to score penalties, absolutely. But a lot of the other shots are kind of around the edge of the area, rather than getting in for tap-ins and kind of, you know, those areas where you think if he keeps getting in that position, he's going to score a lot of goals. A lot of these are kind of, as I say, around the box and maybe from distance as well. And it's worth mentioning at this point, I think, that he took 125 shots in the Premier League last season, Semenyo. That is more than any other player. It's 125 shots to score 11 goals. And just to give you really important context here, Mohamed Salah took 121 shots and scored 29 goals. And what's most interesting about that is Semenyo overperformed his XG last season by 1 goal. And so it makes you think, wow, there must have been some really, really terrible shots that he took in there from areas where he wasn't going to score, really. And so his shot selection, I think, certainly last season, and I don't obsessively watch Bournemouth this season, but last season, absolutely, to me, that looks like it was pretty poor, really, his shot selection. And I just kind of have a little concern that his shot selection, looking at that shot map, hasn't got any better. But some of those are just going in somehow, and you know, maybe he's just in a little purple patch where the poor shots, the low XG shots that he's taking on, are hitting the back of the net. What we don't have at the moment, because there's been so few games this season, is a big enough sample size to make a ruling on that. but he is interesting. And I think, you know, one reason I kind of talk about him now, and I would maybe look at that and kind of rule him out, but I do wonder whether he's not being signed for brilliant shot selection, for the absolute cutting edge that he brings, but maybe because he replaces something that is missing in this squad, which is, you know, maybe they're just the aggression and the pressing and the ability to, you know, to force the opposition backwards, because the cutting edge really should come from Ekitike, Isak, Salah, Gakpo, Wirtz. But for me, are they missing a little bit of a Luis Diaz in that mix? Someone who is, as I say, really aggressive in the press and pushes people back. I mean, Diaz did score a decent amount of goals last season, but he almost kind of didn't need to, in the sense that I'd still think that you wanted him in the team because of the balance that he brought and the work rate that he had. And I think Semenyo's definitely got that. You know, you almost wonder if Liverpool are looking at him as a player who can fix a press that, for me, has been a bit of an issue this season. It's not being as aggressive. It's not being able to prevent the opposition building up. And when they do that, they get into your final third easily. And that's when you start conceding goals. So I want to show you something here, which is kind of a look at what he does on the defensive end as well. And I think this really kind of proves the point. I mean, look, blocks, tackles, aerials won. You can see he's scrapping and fighting in a way that a lot of Liverpool's forwards aren't really doing at the moment. And he could really revitalise that press. And I actually said earlier that, you know, it doesn't help him build up and he's maybe not a solution to that. But I'm actually probably wrong on that, because he kind of reminds me a little bit of Sadio Mane in terms of the strength, the ability to, you know, great touch and everything, that you can kind of hit the ball over the top and he turns dirty possession into something, or he nicks the ball from the defender and all of a sudden you're in at goal. And yeah, just kind of makes me think that there might be something in that and why Liverpool would like him, because it's not his goal scoring numbers, I don't think, because I think they would be worried about a drop off there when they look at the underlying numbers. But it's just, I think he could bring that Diaz, Mane-esque kind of aggression back to Liverpool's front line, really. And he really does defend from the front, which is not something Liverpool have exceeded at. And maybe as well, Arne Slot could feel that he can make him more sensible in his shot selection as well, because he did that with Diaz, by the way. I thought we saw a real upturn in terms of his shot selection last season, and that turned into goals. So maybe they feel they can do a similar thing with Semenyo, and then you would have a very, very rounded, excellent winger on your hands as well. So particularly if there's a clause there that is at a decent price, then maybe Liverpool will think that this is an opportunity they can't miss. But we'll have to see on that front. I'm doing a deep dive into Semenyo just yet, because that's not a link that there's been any concrete info I'm getting at the moment that suggests he's anything other than, yes, someone we're looking at, but definitely someone that Liverpool are going for. Maybe we'll see developments on that front as the weeks go by and as we get nearer to that January transfer window, because, as to say, he is an interesting player. So I could go into a million other players in a million other positions here, but I'm just going to leave it at those three for now, because I feel like they could fit the bill and they could produce solutions for Liverpool. And of course, you may notice, and I know a lot of people want to sign a midfielder, but at the moment, it doesn't seem to me anything that would be on the radar for January. I think that's maybe, if there are changes there, it'd be one in the summer, and probably you'd lose one of your big hitters, but then replace them with someone, whereas at the moment, don't see that as a January priority, even if some people think, and definitely a lot of fans are keen to see additions there. But as I say, I think centre-half is really important at the moment. Build up, maybe Semenyo, just with that cheeky release clause, if the reports are true, could be something in that one. But do let me know your thoughts on all that. I want to know what your ideal January signing, what do you think the one thing Liverpool could do in the January window that would really fix things? And of course, go further forward than that, I want to know what your ideal next summer looks like as well. It's always interesting to hear those talking points, because they do inspire my videos as well. So I'm going to wrap it up there. As usual, I'll ask if you can like and subscribe. I would hugely appreciate that, and I'll see you guys very soon.